So for me, when I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons and I'm running my games, playing in person is a lot of fun because you get to feed off the emotions of the players around you. But also, something as a dungeon master that I really like to do is create props for my players. Whether it's physical maps for them to use, making cool little items for them. I just think that props adds an extra dimension to the immersion of playing Dungeons and Dragons in person. And one of the things that I did recently for one of my campaigns, which my players loved and I really found a lot of fun, was I printed off contracts for them. Now, they were traveling to a homebrew kind of torture realm of hell, and they were going to be meeting an archdevil. And obviously, if you're playing a D&D campaign and you're running players going through hell, you really want to give them the opportunity to make a deal with the devil. That's a kind of a classic trope. It's a lot of fun. So what I did was I printed off a lot of pieces of paper with contracts written out with options of things that they could bide for, and then empty contracts where they could write out the conditions themselves. And what I did then was I kind of poured it coffee over top of the papers, then dried it, dabbed it off so it was just wet but not soaking in it, and then I baked them in the oven for about 200 degrees, about 10 minutes long or so, keeping an eye on them to make sure they weren't burning. And the end result is you get something that looks like this. Little bit of burning on the edges, but it looks like old paper. You can crumple it up a little bit before you put them in. And then you get your characters to sign off, and you get the archdevil to sign as well, using whatever runic language or signature that you like. Now, I had a lot of fun making these. It added a really great dimension to that gameplay session when they saw that I actually had contracts. And it got me thinking, what about making maps? Now, there are definitely professional map makers that you can hire out there. You can design maps and have them actually put them onto cloth and all kinds of material for you. But if you're on a budget like me, sometimes it's better to just make your own. So what I'm doing now is taking some art paper from some of my sketchbooks, and we're going to make a map together. All right, so we're going to be making a smaller map, but I wanted to test it out on a larger piece of paper. So typically what I do is I lay my papers flat inside of a oven tray, a baking tray, and that's how I heat them up. I was using a piece of paper larger than the entire tray itself, so I wanted to test that out first before we do our video. So I'll show you guys what it looks like coming out. Hopefully it hasn't been ruined too much, but we're going to find out together. So this is completely dry now. You see there's a bit of a frame here from the actual tray itself. So I think when I'm drawing the map, we're going to do it on this side here. I had already pre-folded it, so you see that there's some collections of coffee stain there. But I think that actually looks pretty cool. It adds some extra dimension into everything. I like the different shades and tones that you get. But it's discolored now. Looks like old world paper. And I can draw my world map on this one. I had actually drawn a world map already, and then I tried to do the dyeing. And it just made all the ink run, and it looks terrible. I'll show a picture of that as well before we redo it. But first of all, let's get to what we're actually here for, which is our smaller map that's going to fit inside the tray itself. So what I have here is a paper from the Strathmore multi-purpose art book, the kind of big yellow art books you can get from Michael's or any craft store. And then I've just torn it by folding the edges and then tearing it along the folds to make a smaller size that'll fit inside here. This isn't going to be a large world map. This is going to be more of a smaller map of a location for my players. So I just made sure that it fit the right size that I wanted. Now, once we get our paper inside the tray, we're going to take our coffee that we've made, and we are just going to pour it over top. Make sure that we cover the entire surface with it. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. You can dab it with a sponge and drain it. You can use a washcloth like I was using before. All kinds of ways of soaking up the coffee to get rid of it. If you're very careful and steady-handed, you can actually lift up your oven tray pour it directly back into your coffee. Now, once your coffee is soaked and you've drained the remaining portions of your coffee from the tray, once your oven is preheated to 200 degrees, you just pop it right back in. It's looking pretty good, but let's let that side heat up a little bit as well. Alright, let's check it out. See what we've got cooking. Aye, that looks pretty good, it does. We've got some nice discoloration on the back. I actually really like when this happens. I love this because it gives texture to the paper. And you know what? You can always find creative ways to work that into the background. You know, you can make your clear pathways and use this stuff for like heavier rock that they can't pass if it is a map. You don't have to do that, but you can definitely be creative if you want to. But I'm really happy with the way this turned out. So let's get to map making! So this is our new larger map that we've dyed with coffee first that we're going to make our world map on for my player's upcoming campaign. Now the frustrating thing for me is I already did this once. I spent hours creating the map, and then after using an ink pen and using markers to put in different brown shadings on it, I then tried to stain it with coffee, and I completely made all of the colors and all of the lines run. I completely screwed it up. Now when I printed off papers using an HP laser printer, I was able to stain with coffee just fine, but using actual ink pens and ink markers and things like that, obviously the colors ran when I tried to stain it, so that was my mistake. This was the original one where I had laid out all of the locations. I'd put forests in, I'd done ways and coastlines and everything. I'd labeled it all. I put hours and hours of work in, and I ruined it all very quickly with coffee, unfortunately. So this is going to be a reference work. I will post an image in the video here showing you guys a picture of one of the versions which was almost complete. I had put maybe another hour of detail into it after this photo. But obviously, you know what? You make mistakes sometimes, you learn from them, and we move on. So now we get a second chance. Alrighty then. So we have our smaller map, which I'm going to be using for a in-game location that my players are going to face. And here we have our larger piece, which is going to be for our entire world map. Thankfully, I've already got this design, so it's going to be a little bit easier for me to go through. So we're going to start first with the smaller one. Alright, so before we actually get started, we're not going to just start drawing and sketching out on this. I always believe practice makes perfect, so you got to actually, test out your design first on something. Let's find some free paper in here. I don't even know where I got free paper. Oh, no, that's a Green Lantern drawing. Darth Maul. There we go. Alright. So, what I'm going to do here is very loosely just trace out the shape and size of this piece of paper so I know what I'm working with for my practice one. Doesn't really have to be exact because we're not putting a whole lot of detail into this. We're just kind of coming up with a rough idea. First things first, though, I need my actual coffee. Oh yeah, nectar of the gods. The first thing that I have to do is let you guys know what are we actually making on this small map. Now, the new campaign that I'm going to start running this fall is going to be number 1 of 6 connected campaigns that I'm going to run my players through. So I'm going to be making a lot of props and a lot of maps and a lot of cool things, which I will share all of on the channel here. But in this first campaign, I decided to make it very dark and monstrous. werewolves, vampires, fleshy ghouls, all kinds of scarier, kind of darker themes. I'm being heavily influenced by things like the Witcher series, Diablo, um, Castlevania, those sort of things. So one of the things that I definitely feel like I need to have in this campaign is a silver mine, and I think it'd be really cool if the players come across an old dead miner, or perhaps even an adventurer who tried to pass through the tunnels before them, and they find a map of the tunnels on the dead body. So what I've done is I've actually researched and looked into some old timey mine maps and tunnel maps to kind of see how things are drawn. And what we're going to do is create a starting point, and we're going to create kind of like how far the mine got, some sort of placement where they can get to, sort of the end game or the goal of the mine. So we're going to create all the little paths between there, and then we're going to number off certain areas where certain things are going to be taking place, certain events are going to be. And as a DM, if you're going to do this sort of thing, I recommend then you have your own sheet of paper beside you that shows the corresponding event to that number. So depending on what path your players take, if they end up going to 5 first and then they skip the first 4 things, then you already have your event set up and you're not scrambling to try to make things make sense. All right, so I did look up kind of old timey mines, trying to find kind of some old black and white days, and some prospector mines. Everything looks very methodical and engineered in New World, and we really want this to look fantasy. So I caved and I looked at fantasy mind maps, and it really looks like the majority of people draw on their design, and then on the outside they do their, you know, crosshatch kind of pattern on the outside of the map, so it ends up looking kind of like that on the outside. I don't know if you guys can see that, or if you looked up maps online, you've probably seen a lot of that kind of stuff before. So I think what we're going to do instead is just rough out the location sort of and the shape of the mines. We'll transfer it on, and then I'll just put that patterning on the outside, make it look like a typical fantasy map for D&D. So I usually make the mistake of having my players like enter on one side. And then it's kind of obvious that the DM's going to make you go to the opposite side, right? So you kind of know what direction you're going to go into. I want to mess with my players. I don't want them to have any idea where they're going. I want them to drop down into this tunnel and have multiple directions of not knowing where to go. So once they enter a cave and they make their way down into the center, however deep into the earth I'm going to make them go, they're going to open up into a cavern area here. And now what I've also decided is I'm not going to worry too much about, leaving spaces for pathways and stuff, because A, I can just erase them if I need them, and B, this is just a rough draft. We're just planning out the thing here. We can worry about that stuff when we're doing the actual final copy. So they're going to come in here, kind of through the tunnel, and open up into this sort of entryway here. And I'm thinking there'd be mining tools, maybe some dead bodies here, some kind of warning, scary kind of stuff to make them realize, like, oh crap, there's something going on here. And then from this point, I want them to have 4 or 5 different pathways to go, to really kind of emphasize how it's really up to them what they want to do and where they want to go. So what I think I would do is kind of like curve off the wall there a little bit and have one of the pathways go that way. We definitely want one to go straight ahead. Going to do the same thing on this side. And then let's do one. Let's do odd numbers. I like that better than making it seem simple. So we'll have pathway 1 here, 2, 3, and 4. So they got 4 places that they can go. Let's have the first one here. Now, I think what's important to do too is to plan out now what type of encounters do you want them to go into. I always like to split up the challenges that they can possibly face. I don't want it just to be combat around every turn. So I'm thinking we're going to do, we'll say combat. We'll have traps. Let's also have, I don't know what you would call this. I always like to have them have to make checks to get over something. Like you have to leap over a cavern, or you have to scale up a wall. I like them to have some sort of, let's call it hazardous terrain. I like them to have to face off against something, right? So we got combat, traps, hazardous terrain. We're going to make one of these a dead end because that's just kind of funny. Not all pathways are rewarding. Let's have number 5 be treasure. 6. I got it. All right. Let's have them find someone. NPC intro. I like that. So, we got for our 6 sort of events here: combat, traps, hazardous terrain, dead ends, find some treasure, and NPC intro. Find somebody in the caverns, because why not, right? So what I think this is going to be a neat idea is when we're designing what's going to happen in each section of the map, let's actually roll a d6 to see which one of these events is going to happen when I determine that there should be an event. One of my players in one of my campaigns, his daughter was making these like hand knit dice bags, and well, I guess they're not just dice bags, but they were so neat, and I was proud to get one, and it works great for keeping my DM dice. So, all right. So we want to roll a d6 here and determine what's going on. Let's keep my d6s separate because we're going to be using those. Let's put these ones away. All right. Let's go with the first one off to the left here. So, the first thing that they're going to encounter if they go to the left is 3, which is hazardous terrain. All right, so what I'm thinking here is maybe when they go this way, they get to a certain point and the pathway narrows a little bit and there is a steep drop off. It's almost as if the tunnel collapsed into a void of some kind. So I'm kind of imagining right now, if any of you have played God of War and you've gotten to a point where you've had to hug the wall and squeeze on this tiny little platform and like tippy toe along the edge, I'm kind of imagining that. So here, this is kind of all blackness because they don't know quite how far it falls. Now, if they decide to go up the middle, let's roll to see what they get there. That is a 6. So they're going to meet an NPC in here. Let's say this can be a mess area. We'll say that maybe there's a survived NPC in here. And I'll work on the story later. Maybe he's a little cuckoo from being stuck in the tunnel this long. Maybe he's there for nefarious reasons. Maybe he's also an adventurer trying to find something lost in the tunnels. Who knows, right? But we've got a little hidden alcove here, and then the path continues, and I'm not really choosing a direction yet because I want to see what else we figure out in the mine. So let's move on to pathway number 3. Oh, right. We got a 3 again. More hazardous terrain. Biggest hazardous thing that people run into in mines and tunnels are poisonous gases, methane, things like that can be released. They can also be explosive. So what I think would be a great idea, especially because I'm basing a lot of this off of video games, and if you've played Assassin's Creed, Valhalla, if you've played Witcher, that you walk into certain tunnels and things, and there are gases kind of roaming about that if you hit them with a torch, they kind of ignite and explode in that area. So what I'm thinking is it's going to be a very dark tunnel. So let's just put dark there. I do think the majority of my players in this campaign are going to have dark vision. So what we're going to do is say that um, let's have them it kind of widen up into a larger area here, and then I want to have sort of like platforms spaced out so that they can leap across if they notice in time. But starting here, there's going to be gases. Let me say that at the end of the tunnel, I'm going to split this up. I'm going to give them another choice. So after they get through the gases, they can go left or they can go right. I like it because the right tunnel is going to kind of lead them over toward the next section that we have. I want there to be options where they can kind of intertwine and weave together because, that's just fun. That way, if they choose a different path, they don't miss out on all the opportunities. They could make it into another laneway at some point. All right, for the fourth option, 2 traps. I love the idea of a trap not being necessarily dangerous. I love the idea of a trap being an alarm. Kind of like the Pippin twisting the arrow and the head banging down the tunnels and waking up the goblins in Moria. But I am going to set off floor traps here. And I want them to be simple. They're going to be like hunting traps on the floor. Now, if they're looking down only, I'll specify with them, where are you looking? If they look at the floor, they'll notice the bear traps. If they're not looking at the ceiling, they might miss the wire. If they hit the wire, it's going to snap, zip into the wall, and trigger a flame that carries across a line and heads down the tunnels and disappears into the darkness. All right, so I love it. We have our first interaction for each pathway already. We've got our deep drop off where they have to kind of squeeze or balance to get across. We've got a NPC hidden inside the mess hall rest area. We've got poisonous gases right here. And we have abandoned mining equipment with the traps, the warning trap and the bear traps on the ground. I think it's a pretty good start so far. But now we are heading right back over to our beginning section, and we need to roll again. Quick little interlude here. I actually filmed this entire video where I rolled a d6 for every single encounter that the group was going to go up against, every turn, every corner, and there ended up being a lot of them. And the full video of the artwork and me determining what each hazard was going to be and coming up with the idea and sketching it out, the entire video was 56 minutes long. And I knew that if I tried to post a 56-minute long video, YouTube would ask me if I was sure, and nobody would have watched it. So I've reduced it. So I just showed you guys the first hazard on each path, so you kind of get the idea of what I was doing. And I've reduced this to about a 30-minute video. So going forward, you're just going to see all of my artwork. If anyone's interested in seeing the full-length video showing all of my decision making and how I came up with each event that they were going to interact with at each turn, let me know in the comments, and if there's enough interest, I'll post the full thing. Otherwise, enjoy the artwork. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to use a pencil to very lightly outline everything, and then I'm going to use different shades of like browns so that it kind of fits with this old stained paper theme to go over the tunnels, and I'm not going to add as many details as I did on the practice paper because I want some things to still be surprises for the players, but I'm going to have a copy of my own so I know where things happen. And then the outlines of the tunnels, we're going to put a little bit of a patterning in to kind of show where the actual paths are and where it's blocked off for the players. Now, a trick for doing this when you're making borders around beaches and countryside, if there's going to be water around it, or if you're doing caves like this, you want your edges to not be straight lines, obviously. I don't know if you can see it, but you want it to be kind of jagged like this. And the best way to do that is to have a shaky hand. When you're drawing, just, have your hand shake a little bit, and it'll just naturally look right when you do it that way. so this style of kind of hatchwork to show where the darkened areas are on the outside that aren't traversable, it's working pretty well, but it's taken a while. So I'm going to finish this up, and then we will come back into this when I'm going to use this other color to add some more details. I've got blisters on me fingers, but I'm done. I finally got all this done. The amount of line work I did in here hurt me. My fingers are killing me, but that's okay. We got this done. We can clearly see where the walkable pathways are, and I think the way I'm going to make this work is if, they see exactly what paths lead to where, it might be too easy for them to get through it. So I think I'm going to have things covered up with paper and slowly reveal the areas they go to. And maybe that NPC they meet, maybe he's a, map maker of some kind. Maybe he's mapping out the tunnels for some reason. And this will be kind of what they get as they go. So I'm not sure. I'll figure it out. But anyway, let's get to adding some details. I think that's everything that I actually should put in here. It's enough to go off of, for now at least. When I know exactly what the kind of finale is going to be in here, I may add some more geographical hints down here, but I think this is enough to kind of outline what they would have known was in the mine ahead of time. But I like this. I think this is a really good start. It's a good way to get my players going into this location. And so that's kind of the basics of staining your paper with coffee and filling out a map, and kind of the process I go through to make one. Well, there you have it, guys. That is my first map making video. This is our final product here. I am really excited about the way this turned out. I think it looks really cool. I'm actually very excited now about new ideas I have for future maps that I'm going to make. I'm not going to post videos for every single map that I do up, but I'll probably be posting them on the Instagram and Facebook page when I do make one that I think looks really cool. But yeah, this is something new. We're trying new things, and I'm hoping to make a lot more videos for more props that I'm going to use in my Dungeons & Dragons campaign so that you guys can take a look. And if you want to make them for your own games, if you want to make them for your own fun crafts, if there are things you might want to do with your kids, whatever you like, this channel is going to cover all different kinds of artwork. Obviously, this is a little more centered on tabletop gaming, as was the potion video, but we'll be getting into a lot more fun stuff throughout the year. So stick with me, keep watching more of RedBeard's workshop, and don't forget to like and subscribe.